Hey guys, and welcome back to another Lost Bits video right here on TetraBitGaming, the series where we explore the unused, altered, and unseen content in gaming. In case you haven't seen my first video on FNAF Into the Pit, I went over a whole bunch of unused graphics left over in the game, so definitely check that one out if you missed it. But anyways, in this second video, we're actually gonna be going over some more unused graphics, cause apparently 27 minutes just wasn't enough. And these include some unused achievements, various unused arcade game things, and some more unused animations. I have a second Steam key of Into the Pit to give away again, so drop a comment letting me know this time what your favorite game is in the series for a chance to win. Anyways, with all that said, sticky hand slap that like button below. It's time to dive into some more Into the Pit Lost Bits. Alright, so to kick things off here, despite going over a ton of unused sprites in the first video, there are actually a whole bunch more to go over. And to start here, we got several associated with the game's arcade minigames. For starters, there's this early version of the Pizza Roller Skee-Ball game that, yeah, looks quite a bit different than how it's seen in the final cut. And already throwing things back to the first video, this seems to have been from the in-between point in the game's development where the style was being changed from the Super Nintendo style, as this graphic doesn't have the Super Nintendo 8:7 aspect ratio that the other Super Nintendo graphics had. But this obviously isn't as refined as the final version. Now, unless you really like the basic retro design here, personally, I think it's a clear winner which one of these looks better. Then next, there are a few unused sprites meant for the To Be Beautiful secret minigame. So in the final version of this minigame, the player takes control of Eleanor here and has to grant another character, Sarah's, wish of becoming more beautiful, and you do this by essentially putting parts of her together. Well, it looks like the original plan for this minigame was a bit different, as instead of grant her wish, the text was apparently once going to read, put them back together instead. And instead of putting pieces of Sarah together, it looks like the original plan was for the player to put the original animatronics back together, as there are leftover sprites of pieces of Foxy meant for this minigame too. And although only pieces of Foxy are left over for this minigame specifically, there are also fully assembled sprites of Chica, Bonnie, and Freddy as well. But these were all also meant for another minigame too, which we'll touch on more in a bit. Now furthermore, although the sprites were changed, the file names of the pieces of Sarah all actually still reference the other animatronics. Like these heads were for Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica respectively, and then the minigame itself is still internally referred to as Rebuild Them. And then to add to all of that, there's also a leftover audio file referencing Chica meant for this minigame as well, but it's only like a fraction of a second long. So yeah, pretty interesting that this minigame was changed like this, but since To Be Beautiful is a story in the original Into the Pit book that this game is based on, I guess it makes sense to tie this minigame more into that story. Then next, it looks like Old Man Consequences, as seen in one of the endings in FNAF World, was supposed to appear in the Balloon Boy minigame where you grab the hats. So for those that don't know, there's a secret ending to this minigame where after you collect the 5 hats on the main screen, you can hop onto this ledge and go to the left to find some secret rooms. And at the end of them, you normally see Purple Guy dangling the 6th and final hat in the minigame. Well, apparently, there was a plan for the minigame to have a 20% chance of Old Man Consequences replacing Purple Guy, and this is actually still in the game to a point that it can even be re-enabled. And by doing so, we can also see some scrapped dialogue from the fella, apparently here called Scared Man, as he would say, "You fell down the rabbit hole, didn't you? It's not your fault, you didn't know. The others didn't know either. You're a little different from them, you know? You're not trapped yet. Find solace in knowing such. Look to the sky or fall into the pit. The choice is yours." He'll then drop the last party hat, and then you can either grab it, which will result in you falling to your death in the minigame, unless of course you time a tricky little jump, or you can go back to the door on the main screen to win the minigame instead. Honestly, I think this would have been a really cool Easter egg and nice callback to one of my favorite games in the FNAF series. I wouldn't be too crazy about it boiling down to just a 20% chance and think some other requirements to see this would have been better, but either way, I hope this is something that ends up getting added back into the game in the future. And then also for this game, there's an old heads-up display for it that's not only larger and features some different graphics for the controls, but it also reveals a lives system that ended up getting scrapped. Looks like the idea was originally for the player to have 3 lives here, instead of it just being a one and done. And then lastly for the arcade games here, for the secret minigame where you have to pick up balloons, get ready for this. As if Vanny hasn't been cast aside enough as it is, apparently this minigame was originally going to feature Vanny and would have had the player take control of her for it. And furthermore, there's this sprite of Purple Guy also meant for this minigame, as he was apparently planned to command Vanny here. And to support this, there's also unused text graphics of him presumably saying "good girl" to Vanny. In 2 styles actually. And similar to this other one, there's also some unused text saying "save them all." And that's not all for this minigame, as instead of finding balloons, based on the balloon counter and spawning system referring to them as children, it looks like originally the plan was for the player to find children instead, and I guess deliver them to Purple Guy, and that probably explains why this minigame is internally referenced as "lead them," which, yeah, doesn't really make sense for balloons. And to add to that, although hard to see when re-enabled in the game, there's also normally unused "bring them" text left over as well. And like I said earlier, we'll talk about this more in a future video, but there's also a scrapped minigame called Guard Duty, where you have to bring candy to the animatronics to prevent them from escaping, I guess. And here too, originally the plan was for the player to play as Vanny as well. I think it's really cool to see this sprite of Vanny in this style, but at this point, Vanny content being cut from a FNAF game doesn't surprise me at all. Now moving on, next we have several unused graphics left over in the game for various achievements that appear to have been either older versions of the graphics that just ended up getting updated, or the entire achievement itself just ended up getting seemingly scrapped. So for the graphics that just ended up getting updated, first we have this achievement graphic featuring an endo. And this one is an early version for this graphic, as this is apparently Oswald's endoskeleton meant to have been awarded to the player for getting the secret Night 5 ending where you don't fight off the yellow rabbit. Then, related to the icon for the "Who Are They" achievement icon you get for grabbing the strange photo in the party room towards the end of the game, there's this similar graphic with William Afton's face scratched out and Henry scratched out entirely. Due to their similarities, it's also believed that this may have been an old icon for the achievement as well, but its art style also seems to match that what's seen in cutscenes. So although the file name for this picture is just Henry William Photo, since it looks nothing like the menu graphic for it, it's also possible that this was meant to appear on screen after Oswald would pick it up. Or perhaps there were plans for the player to be able to inspect it, similar to the other dad items that you can collect in the game. And then, just as a small aside from the achievements here, while we're talking about graphics that you could inspect after picking up an item, there are several unused pieces of a drawing apparently made by a kid, all titled "Creepy Kid's Drawing." And when put together, we can see that the complete drawing would feature the yellow rabbit, spreading some strawberry jam on the floor. And although going unused in the final game, these scraps of the drawing can apparently be found in some unused rooms left over in the leaked Switch dev build of the game. Then after this, we got an early version of the "Don't Jinx Yourself" achievement featuring some less detailed artwork of Jinx the cat. And then, although not 100% confirmed, there's this graphic for an achievement titled "What Were You Expecting?" And based on that name and these doors, I'm quite confident that this is an early version of the "See Ya Dad" achievement that you get for just leaving the pizzeria in the past early without saving your dad. And then, for the various achievements that seem to have gotten scrapped, next is this unused achievement graphic featuring a rabbit behind a window, referred to simply as Bonnie Window. Yeah, makes sense. And this is apparently for a scrapped achievement for seeing the yellow rabbit in a window somewhere in the game. Presumably Oswald's home, as I think that's the only place in the game that you'd be able to see a character through a window. And yeah, in case you were wondering, the yellow rabbit is simply referred to as Bonnie or Spring Bonnie or even Golden Bonnie, while actual Bonnie is referred to as Purple Bonnie. Yeah, purple, not blue. So this was likely for the yellow rabbit and not for Bonnie. Then, after this, we have some achievements associated with some mechanics that were at least mostly scrapped from the game. First, we'll talk about this more probably in the next video when I go over a developer debug menu that's left over in the game, but basically, there was planned to be an insanity mechanic where, over time, Oswald's insanity level would rise, and as it went up, more and more negative effects would start to apply, like starting to hear children laughing, a heart rate increase, spawning NPCs, a fake Bonnie, and more. And I believe the random phantom jump scares that do occur in the game seem to be a remnant from this mechanic, or at the very least, they would happen more often the higher the insanity level. Anyways, all that to say, there's this unused achievement icon featuring some half yellow rabbit, half brain art, and it's very likely that this achievement was associated with this insanity mechanic as it's titled Going Crazy. Then similarly, we got this icon for a scrapped heart attack achievement. Now in my last video, I mentioned how the heart rate mechanic was something scrapped from the game that's still seen in the leaked Switch dev build of the game when hiding in a vent. But we also got various other unused graphics in the game, as well as references to a heart rate system, and these all appear to suggest that Oswald's heart rate was something that would be related to Oswald's status when being chased or him making a noise. There are graphics for Oswald's heart being in a low, mid, as well as high state, as well as a heart rate monitor with some heartbeat lines. Based on all of this, my theories are that either A, based on these two graphics, this is what the noise mechanic was originally, and that instead of it just being a noise meter, Oswald's heart rate is what would tip off the animatronics to his location, and noises and running would simply cause his heart rate to go up. Or B, based on how these heart graphics are titled, this may have been an old health system that would be split into 3 tiers, similar to how health is handled in the Resident Evil series. Then, after this, we have 2 unused achievements that actually use the same graphic of Oswald and his dad, titled Good Riddance and Out of the Pit, an obvious inversion of both the title and the achievement that you get for first jumping into the pit, so it's likely that these were related to completing the game. Then next, we have this unused achievement titled Generator featuring the power switch, so likely that this was to be awarded after turning the power back on after the generator fails. The Explorer achievement features a book. It's not really clear what the requirements for this one could be. Eavesdropper features a bunch of phones, so it's likely that this one would have been unlocked by listening to all of the phone guy's calls in the game. Collector, based on its name, likely would have had the player collect all of the game's items or arcade prizes. Then we got unused achievements titled Feeling Drained and inversely Feeling Charged, likely for the flashlight running out of battery and the player putting in a new one, respectively. Then also flashlight related, we have a scrapped achievement titled What's This For? And it seems like this may have been for finding a battery in the game before you get the flashlight. Interrupted features a creepy icon of the yellow rabbit, but it's unclear what the conditions for this could have been. Then there's an achievement icon titled Hide and Seek, and it just features the interact icon for hiding in the game. It seems unclear whether this would have been its own achievement that was scrapped, or based on the name similarity, an early version of the Hide and Seek World Champ achievement. And then finally, we also have some achievements all seemingly associated with endings for the game, and similar to some of the ones earlier, it's unclear exactly what these were for, so I'm just gonna speculate some more here. First, we have Hanging On by a Thread, which, based on the icon, was likely for getting the yellow rabbit trapped in the ball pit near the ending of the game. And then we have 2 pretty crazy unused icons. First, there's Dad, Why Dad? Featuring artwork of Oswald's pop and Freddy behind him. And due to his worried expression looking at Freddy and the name itself, perhaps this was for Freddy unaliving Oswald's dad? Then similarly, lastly for the unused achievements, at least in this style, there's one referred to as It's All My Fault, with Oswald's dad looking quite unwell in the ball pit. Again, based on the name, this appears to, perhaps, have been for an ending where Oswald's dad doesn't make it. Now, this is very speculative, of course, but these last two scrapped achievements definitely seem to suggest that there were other bad endings in the game that were scrapped, where Oswald doesn't end up saving his father. Now, if you thought we were done with the unused achievement graphics, boy, do I have some news for you, as there are a whole bunch more. But this time, we have even earlier icons where they have a completely different pixel art style and, well, actual color. And again, first, for those that appear to be older versions of other achievement icons, we got one for an achievement titled Get to Safety, featuring a graphic of a glowing-eyed Freddy, and based on the name, this could be an old icon for the It's Me achievement for hiding in the golden Freddy suit near the start of the game. Then I mentioned this sprite in my first video, but it turns out it's actually an early icon for an achievement titled Blood Pressure, likely related to the heart attack achievement and scrapped heart rate mechanic we went over earlier. There's an even earlier icon for the Feeling Drained achievement, an early version of the Master of Stealth icon featuring presumably Oswald wearing a hood. We got an early version of the Impatient achievement icon sporting TLDR on the button that's missing on the final version. Then we have an icon for a Game Master achievement, which seems to be an early version of the Not a Gamer achievement for completing all of the arcade games. And then we also have 3 early icons for presumably getting the 1, 2, and 3-star endings in the game, all titled Take the High Ground in either an easy, normal, and hard variety, likely referring to a difficulty level. Then, for achievements that seem to have been completely scrapped, first we have Hello Operator, which, based on the name, my theory is that this may have been for trying to call the operator to determine Oswald's mom's phone number. Then, we got a cut achievement titled That's How They Get You, featuring an icon of a bear trap, and similarly there's Quick Memory, featuring a closed bear trap with a question mark. Now, although these may not necessarily mean that Oswald was supposed to get his leg chomped on by some bear traps, these may indicate that there were going to be some sort of traps laid around the game that Oswald could step on, and then the player would have to do something to escape them. I guess maybe something similar to how Bonnie grabs you in the final cut of the game. And then lastly, for the unused achievement stuff, we have one for the To Be Beautiful arcade game sharing its name featuring a necklace. Now, if you aren't familiar with the story, basically, Eleanor, the animatronic that you play as in the arcade game, gives a girl named Sarah a necklace to grant her wish of becoming beautiful. And this is the necklace that's seen in the end of the minigame, and obviously this achievement icon would have been referencing that. And although all of those are the only achievement sprites in this style that are left over individually with associated naming, there's a whole sprite sheet for all of these early achievements where we can see a few more of them. And there's also leftover data for some of them, so we can kinda piece together what they were. We got a cell phone with a 911 blocked, and this looks to be an early graphic for the Who Ya Gonna Call achievement for attempting to call 911. Then we have this juiced up battery, again likely an early version of the scrapped Feeling Charged achievement. Similarly, next we have a basic looking flashlight with a battery, and this appears to be an early version of the What's This For achievement for getting the battery before the flashlight. Next, we got this achievement icon featuring a hat and Number 1 Dad text on it, and this appears to be an early version of the Out of the Pit achievement for rescuing Oswald's dad. And then lastly, we have sprites of a single VHS tape as well as a collection of 5, and I couldn't really find any names associated with these. Now, there aren't any collectible VHS tapes in the final cut of the game, but there is one that appears on the security desk in the past version of the pizzeria. So perhaps that might be a remnant of these achievements. Either way, it looks like VHS tapes used to be a collectible in the game that ended up getting scrapped along with these two achievements. Overall, honestly, I think the art style for these early achievement icons is quite a bit better than the minimalist style that we ended up getting in the final cut of the game. And then, although their graphics aren't unused, a few of the file names appear to reveal early names for their associated achievements. The icon for the Gimme 5 achievement for collecting all 5 of the dad items is referenced as 5 items at Daddy's. Sugar Rush is listed as Candy Candy Candy. Hello 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 is referred to as a message for you. And lastly, the achievement for getting all of the other achievements, Looking to the Future, is simply known as 100% whatever. Now obviously, 5 items at Daddy's sounds kinda weird, but the other changed names I think are pretty intriguing. So I mentioned a bunch of unused sprites and animations for the human characters in my first video, but we also got some unused sprites and animations for the animatronic fellas as well. For starters, there's this really broken down version of Fredboy, with an eyeball and arm on the floor beside him. This sprite looks quite similar to the broken Freddy animatronic seen in the backstage room, though with some seemingly more basic shading and obviously more decay. Then next, we actually have sprites for unused jump scare animations for Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica. Now these don't appear to be fully unused, as like a frame of each of them seems to be used in the random phantom jump scares that occur in the game. Well, at least for Freddy and Chica. Personally, I don't think I've gotten Bonnie's. In any case though, the rest of the sprites for these animations appear to go unused. Bonnie's also appears to be split into 2 sections, with him starting to grab the player and then actually doing the scare. And then, although Chica is seen wearing her bib and Bonnie his bow tie, Freddy's animation has him not only lacking his bow tie, but also his hat. Then another pretty interesting tidbit for Freddy's animation here is that it appears to have been based on Bonnie's jump scare from the original Five Nights at Freddy's game. And although only seemingly partially used with the phantom jump scares, the file names of these refer to them as intro and general jump scares, suggesting that maybe these were early versions of their jump scares for when you're first introduced to all the animatronics, and their general jump scares that would occur if you were caught by them. And then last but not least, the main animatronic of this game has some unused animations as well. These include the yellow rabbit opening a door and motioning for Oswald to follow him, and if we look closely, we can see the purple hallway behind him. And if you watched my first video, you may remember that this looks to have been in Oswald's home. Then we have an animation of the rabbit like feeling up some object in the background, one of him peeking through a door, similar to the tease at the start of the game, though obviously not obscured in the shadows here. Then we have a pair of unused animations for the game's ending, one of him seemingly taking a hit, lunging at the player and taking another hit, and then an animation of the yellow rabbit tripping into the ball pit and getting tangled in the netting seen in the gameplay style, rather than the cinematic cutscene style that ended up being used in the final cut, which honestly, I think that one looks quite a bit better. And then, in addition to all of these unused animations for the yellow rabbit that seem further along, there are also some early unfinished animations too. These include one for the rabbit's hand extending from the ball pit, a very basic early version of the rabbit lifting up the tablecloth for a table hiding spot. Then we have an even more basic looking animation of the rabbit looking for the player in another hiding spot where like 80% of the graphic is unfinished to say the least. Based on there being an emphasis on only a slit being visible, it's likely that this was an early version of the rabbit looking for the player in the closet hiding spot. And then lastly, we have another early seeking animation, this time for the player hiding in the golden Freddy suit. And this appears to use an incredibly early art style that looks quite a bit different than anything seen in the game. And interestingly enough, this animation uses the same 8:7 aspect ratio as the Super Nintendo, so it's likely that this was put together back when the game was planned to release on Super Nintendo carts. And honestly, I think the yellow rabbit looks a bit more unsettling this way. And my friends, we'll leave it there for part 2 here, and wouldn't you know it, we're still not done with the unused graphics in this game. Honestly, this will easily set the record for more unused graphics in a game that I've covered, but stay tuned, there is more to chat about than the unused graphics, which I'll hopefully start getting into next video. So stay tuned for that in the near future, and be sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell to be notified as soon as it's up. Till then though, check out some of my other Lost Bits videos, and as always, thank you all so much for stopping by today, and I will see you in a bit.